Thank you for listening to the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. Subscribe to my show and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you or someone you know would like to be featured in the Women's Motorsports Network News online magazine, this podcast, or Let's Talk Racing Live, my social media show, contact me via Messenger on Facebook at Melinda Russell, or send me an email at womensmotorsportsnetwork@gmail.com. Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with the Women's Motorsports Network. And it's my privilege to have as my guest today, Tami Bandimere. Tami and I have been trying to get together for several months, and we've had a husband who cut his arm, and she was traveling. We've had all kinds of things, haven't we, Tami? But
yeah,
we were persistent. We were persistent, and we finally are going to be able to talk today. And I'm really excited to talk to her and learn about all the things that are going on in her life and what it was like to be a racetrack owner and all those fun things. So, Tami, first, I'll get started with you telling me a little bit about yourself for the people maybe that don't know you, your family, that kind of thing, whatever you're willing to share. And then you can go right on into how did you get involved in motorsports?
Absolutely. Well, Melinda, thank you for your persistence as well. It works both ways. And so I'm really excited to get the opportunity to share. So I am a third generation owner operator of Bandimere Speedway. My grandparents actually started the facility in 1958. So last year we celebrated our 65th anniversary, which was just unbelievable to all of us that we had been here 65 years. But, you know, my dad had always said that my grandfather was probably the best dad that a young man could have in the 50s and 60s, because my grandfather really believed that, well, first of all, he loved the automobile, and he loved my grandmother, and he loved Jesus. And he really felt like he wanted to have a place for young people to experience the speed of the automobile off the city streets, because my father was street racing and he knew that that wasn't safe. And he thought that, you know, most kids are given footballs and baseballs and basketballs, and they're told to hit them and to throw them and to play with them, and then they're given a car, an automobile, and they're like, oh, don't do that, you know. And he was like, no, there should be a place where they can have fun with the automobile, and it should be a safe environment, someplace that, you know, is a responsible place. So he and my grandmother, actually, this is the second location that we were supposed to be in. He had a brother that had some property and got all the permitting for that. And then when they started moving dirt, the neighbors said, what are we building here? And when he said a racetrack, they just all got up in arms. And according to my dad, it got a little ugly. And so my grandfather said, you know, I'm not really here to pick a fight. Find me a better spot. And so for the last 65 years, we have inhabited this beautiful location along the Hogback Mountain, west of Denver in Morrison, Colorado. And, you know, I was just telling Melinda that I just got back from Bristol, and man, that is a beautiful racetrack too. There are so many beautiful racetracks across the country, and none of us can take credit for that. That's all a God thing. That's all God's landscape. And we just kind of tuck ourselves into it and decide to make noise and run races. But over the years, you know, we've developed equipment for other racetracks and for sanctioning bodies for track prep. But we have, in 1987, we finally knew where the highway was coming. In fact, I'm sitting in my office right now and I can see the cars going by on the highway. So it's literally within walking distance of our front office. And, you know, they had said that give it 35 years and you would start to see development encroaching along the corridor of the highway. And it's been 35 years. And if I were to walk across the highway, I would walk right into the front yard of a home that's being built right across the street. So they weren't wrong. They were they were absolutely right. The highway, though, was a huge blessing to our family because it gave us really, really good ingress and egress, and was able to allow us to get people in and out of the facility so much easier. So, with the good comes the not so
Right.
good. And so, here we are 35 years later, and we have sold the facility. We're in negotiations right now, and everything is taking way slower than what we thought. But that's part of that. Sit and wait, be patient, because things are still working. But last year was our last year of racing, and so April rolled around, and we all looked at each other like, "What are we going to do with ourselves?" And
Right.
so I've done a little bit of reinventing of myself, and I've been divorced for almost 17 years, so it's me. And so that makes it a little easier for me to be able to, decide what I want to do, and then do something different. I have 3 children, they're all grown. And so, it's pretty much me. And so that's been kind of a little terrifying, and yet on the other hand, kind of an exciting and fun experience,
Yeah.
to realize that I can do something different, and maybe I can even use my skills and my gifts a little better.
hmm Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And as we said, talked a little bit before we started recording, it's a new season of life for you. And so
mhm.
that's not a bad thing. It's
No.
just finding that thing that brings you passion and gets you excited to get up in the morning and be like, oh, I can't wait to do whatever it is you're going to do.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and it's ironic that I'm with you today because I actually just debuted a new radio show here in Colorado, which I will then turn into some podcasts and that kind of thing. But that, I really enjoy talking to people just like you, and I really enjoy hearing their stories,
hmm
because as I travel across the country, you sit next to somebody and you just strike up a conversation, and next thing you know, you're just going, "You are really interesting. You're a very
hmm
interesting person. Do
Yeah,
other people know your story?" And most people are like, "Oh, I don't really have a story," but we all have a story.
absolutely.
We all have a story. So I've had the opportunity to interview several people already and put some radio shows in the can, so to speak. And I'm so happy with it because some of them, when I approached them, they were like, "Me? You want to talk to
hmm
me?" And I was like, "Yeah, I actually really do, because I know some things about you, and I want other people to know those things about you." So, yeah.
Yeah, and I have the same reaction, Tammy, from people.
Mhm.
And I think people who are not famous, let's say, um, don't realize that their stories are just as interesting, sometimes more so.
Mhm.
Sometimes the adversity they've gone through or the accomplishments they've made that they just look at as not that big of a deal, but to other people it's amazing. And so I love those reactions like, well, what are we going to talk about? And I'm like, well, you're going to tell me your story.
Uh-huh.
And there's no, and then they're like, well, what kind of questions are you going to ask me? Well, I'm going to ask you questions that you're going to know all the answers to
Mhm.
because it's
Correct.
all about you and your story. And
Yeah.
there's just nothing better. I mean, you're going to be great at that show. And I can't wait to, hopefully, I can listen to it somehow. Will it be streamed?
Yeah, so I'm really working on that right now. Actually, this radio station got in touch with me. I was on a show a couple of years ago, and they asked me if I'd ever considered doing a radio show. And I said, no, I really have never, that has never crossed my mind, to be really honest with you. And they had said, well, we'll put together something, we'll get back in touch with you. Well, that was 2 years ago.
hmm
So I completely honestly forgot all about it. And then I get an email saying, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but we'd really like to pursue this. And I was like, wow. Wow. So it's just kind of grown from there. And again, I had that attitude as well. Me? You want me to do a radio show? So I
hmm
think that I think probably the lesson in a lot of this is just say yes, because you just don't know, I mean, I know there's some things that we definitely should say no to, but there are some of those opportunities where God tugs at your heart and you kind of go, yes, maybe
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I mean, the Bible says if he calls you to it, he's going to call you through it. So he's going to
Right.
get you through it. So interesting what you said about people thinking that they're not celebrities. So when this all started to look like it was going to come together, I knew that I wanted my dad to be my first guest.
Oh,
And because first of all, I thought, I feel real comfortable around him.
yeah.
And he's got just incredible stories. I mean, our family wrote a book. In fact, the name of my show is called Living It Loud. And our family wrote a book for our 55th anniversary called Living It Loud. And I'm the one that came up with that title because nobody really could come up with what they thought kind of encompassed everything. And it's not only living it loud as far as drag racing, but living it loud, meaning, our faith and that kind of thing. And so when this radio show came up, I was like, oh, I came up with a name for the book. I'm using the same name for
Yeah, that's a great name. That's a great
but
name.
yeah, I thought so, and then it gives us a chance to explain a little bit more of what we live loud. But so I go to dinner with my mom and dad every Friday night, and I said to my dad and mom one night, I said, okay, guys, I have to tell you about this. I've got a new radio show coming up, and my mom and dad were like, really? And I said, yeah. And I said, Dad, I'd really like for you to be my first guest. And he goes, well, I would be honored. And
Oh,
and then I looked at my mom and, she's kind of going, yeah, that's a great idea. And I looked at my mom and I go, and you're going to be my second guest.
I knew you were going to
And,
say that.
and she just looks at me. She goes, oh, Tami, my hands are sweating already. And I said, Mom, don't worry about it. I said, she goes, but how long is it? And I said, it's an hour. She goes, I don't have enough to talk about in an hour. And I said, well, you know what? I said, we'll start with a half an hour. And if you are exhausted and you have nothing more to say after a half an hour, then we're done. I'll fill in that hour with somebody else. And bless her heart, she comes into my office and we sat down and I said, I'm going to tee up a few questions and then I just want you to talk. And we got done with that hour and she goes, well, that went really fast, Tami Jo. And I said, yes, it did.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited. My dad's show aired last Wednesday and my mom's will air this Wednesday.
Okay.
So I wanted the two really most important people in my life to be the first two that I shared with the world. So
yeah. And so tell me, while we're on that subject, how can I listen to it? Where do I go to find it?
So it's actually on a radio station here called KLDC. It's 1220 AM. And I'm assuming that you can download an app for it.
Probably.
Because whenever, honestly, I have to be really serious. I mean, I don't even own a radio at my house anymore. So whenever my dad is on local radio stations, I download the app and then I can listen. They have a what's playing now kind of a thing. That kind of a thing. But it's called Living It Loud, and it airs on Wednesdays at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and then it re-airs on Fridays at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So it's the same show Wednesday and Friday.
Okay.
And again, AM 1220 KLDC. And then, like I say, I've only done one show yet. So as soon as they send me the link to that, I will get it downloaded and it'll show up on, Spotify and YouTube and that kind of thing. And so then you can start searching for stuff like that. But
I'm so excited for you because I'm going to bore you for a minute and tell you how I got started doing a podcast. I have a newspaper background. So for years when I lived in Illinois, I owned a weekly newspaper. And
I used to get it, by the way.
Really?
Yes, I did.
And so I used to tell stories, good news stories. I always said everybody else prints the court reports and the whatevers, And so, and my kids were in school. We did a lot of school news. So anyway, I had a newspaper background, my first husband and I moved to Michigan. He took a different job, and so we sold that, and that all went away. Well, then when my son was still living and he got us all involved in motorsports, time went on. We got crazy involved in motorsports. You know what happens? It gets in your blood, and
Uh-huh.
you can't get away from it. And so I decided that I was going to do a career change, kind of like you're doing. And since I had the publishing background, I thought I'm going to do a magazine, an online magazine. And so I talked to several people who had racing related magazines, and they all told me, do not do a print magazine. Do us an online magazine that people can print if they want to. So that was my first good piece of advice that I took. And so I started the magazine in August of 2017. So I had some friends that ran a series, a racing series, and they called it a radio show, but it aired on Facebook. And so they asked me if I would be on like every week, 15 minutes, and interview a woman driver. Well, sure. It's kind of like telling the stories in a magazine,
Mhm.
only you're talking to them. I thought
Mhm.
I could do that. So I started doing that, and I did that for about 3 months on their show. And then the one night they said, one day they said to me, Melinda, your part of the show is one of the most popular parts. You should really have your own show. And I said, oh, you're kicking me off? And like, no, we just think you should have your own show. So I
Uh-huh.
thought about it not very long and decided, okay, I can do this.
Mhm.
I started my podcast, and
Mhm.
that's, almost 300 shows later. Here we are.
Mhm.
So it
And
goes
I get,
quick.
yeah. And did you ever have a fear of running out of people? I mean, because
No.
every once in a while I think to myself, I've got a list, and then at first I thought, well, I could do this for like 3 months, and then I think I'm going to be out of people, and then all of a sudden,
Mm-mm.
I'm realizing that person's got a good story. That person's got a good story. I need to write them down. I need to do that, and just today, it occurred to me that Frank and Kay Peterson live right across the street, and he raced Pikes Peak Hill Climb for years, and what a great story! And I want to interview the two of them together
Yeah.
because they've got just really great stories. I mean, I was part of some of them, but yeah, and so there's another one. So yeah, it just kind of, that was my first fear, is that I would run out of people.
And
And yeah,
Tammy, you're interviewing men and women.
yes,
I
yeah,
99% only interview women, and I have a list. I'll be dead before I get to everybody. I mean, and they're not famous people. They're
uh-huh,
not, some of them are better known than others, but there's a
hmm,
lot of women and young girls. I love interviewing little girls because you never know what they're going to say, and
uh-huh,
they're just so cute and they're so fun to do. And then I interview, women who are retired and raced and have lots of stories and everything in between, lots of younger girls or 20s, 30s who are still racing.
hmm,
Um, but I have a list both for the magazine and for the podcast that I'll never run out of names because there's always new ones coming into the sport.
hmm,
And, as the women grow and become more well known, if you will, or their names come across my feed on Facebook. Oh, I've never heard of Susie Jones. And
hmm,
then I reach out and say, Susie, would you like to be on my podcast or featured in my magazine?
hmm,
Rarely do I have anybody say no. And most of the time it's because they're shy. They
hmm,
don't know what they're going to say.
sure, sure.
So
Well, and
you're
that was,
not going to
you
run
know,
out.
well, and that was with my mom. I said, Mom, it's just a conversation. I said, you and I can sit at a restaurant for 3 hours and talk. So I said, an hour should be nothing for you. She's
Right.
like, well, I know, but no, she did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
And she has been, hmm, my mom has been such an incredible support support for our family and for my dad. And I am so incredibly blessed that my dad's 86, my mom's 82, and they are so healthy and they are so independent and they are so vibrant that I just get to enjoy them
Yeah.
way longer than some of my girlfriends' parents have,
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, God's been good.
Very
Hmm.
blessed. I lost both my parents when they were in their 70s.
Hmm.
And I'm 68. So, won't be long, I'll be 70. And they were
Hmm.
72 and 73 when they passed away. So, as I near that age, I think about that more often, and they never saw me. I believe they know what I'm doing, but they never saw me when they were alive for what I'm doing in motorsports.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, but I know they know.
yeah. Well, my grandmother actually, she died of cancer in 1965, and she was only 56 years old, something
Oh
like that. So I
wow.
know the feeling, when you would think, oh, 56, that's old.
Young.
Until you
Well,
turn 56. And then you're
that's
like,
right.
I don't feel that old. Um,
Yeah.
and then my grandfather passed away in 86. He was 77. So he had quite a few more years after that. But it's kind of interesting because my dad and I were talking about this, that I was only 3 when my grandmother passed away. And I have a lot of traits, I've been told, of her. So at 3 years old, you don't pick those up because, you're only
No.
3. So that has to be a lot of genetics,
Uh-huh.
that are just, talking to people and wanting to know people and being able to
Yeah.
multitask and, just some of those things, some of those traits that she had got passed down to me and I really didn't even know her. So,
Yeah. For sure. That's true. So I'm
mhm,
going to ask you, you're not doing the racetrack day-to-day management.
mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about what would have been your biggest challenge running the racetrack, especially as a woman, because some guys are not going to have a woman telling them what to do. And then what was your biggest blessing from being a racetrack owner?
Well, probably the biggest challenge, and we're third generation, so truly, it was started by my grandma and grandpa, and then my dad was really the biggest bulk of the 65 years of running the racetrack. And of course, he just groomed my sister and brother and I to, kind of take over and that kind of thing. He retired, I think, for the third time about 5 years ago, and decided that the business should be run by the executive team, which is 7 of us. That it's my mom, my dad, myself, my brother and his wife, and my sister and her husband. So I think the thing that could be a challenge is that um, there are certain things my dad really recognized in all of us that we each had a different gifting. So that was really great because um, he allowed us to do what we like to do within the business, within the family business. And so, I really could care less about track prep. I mean, that is not in my wheelhouse. That's
Mhm.
not I don't care about that. But we have someone in our family that really knows how to do that. Great. You do that. And then, again, teching in cars and that kind of thing. Not really my wheelhouse. That's not really, I don't even really want to learn that. In fact, I've sat on several boards. I'm actually the chair of Racers for Christ board right now, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But every time I get on a board, I'm like, I will be the chair of the board, but you cannot expect me to do anything financial. Please do not put me on the finance board. You will be so sorry that you did that. I'm just telling you up front. But anyway, so one of the things that I, of course, love to do is meet people and to, connect people and that kind of thing. So several years ago, 27 years ago to be exact, we were kind of struggling with the neighbors because we were changing some zoning here. And of course, you know how that goes. You have to have public meetings and that kind of thing. And people just didn't really understand what we did. You know, they really didn't understand that this place was built to get kids off the streets and to educate people about the automobile. We're not here. Our intent is not to make your lives miserable as our neighbors, you know, to tie up traffic and to mess with your sleeping pattern and that kind of thing. That's really not our intent. And so I started a reading program called Race to Read for elementary age kids, and started it at the school that my kids went to elementary school. And it just began kind of organically. It was a brand new school. They were looking for something fun to do the first year. I said, well, let's do a reading program. And if they read a certain amount, they get free tickets to the races for themselves and an adult. And so we did that the first year. And you know how that is. You're kind of going, done.
How many years ago was that?
27 years.
Yeah. And you're still doing it.
Well, we finished it in 2023 because, you know, now we don't really have the key to it was the fact that, you know, the kids could earn tickets to come to the races. And since we're not racing this year, that kind of throws that out. But for 27 years, I'll tell you what, we had, and some years we had 35 schools, some years we had 70 schools, you know, it just depended. And we didn't spend really any advertising on it. It grew by word of mouth. And the beauty of it is that we didn't tell the kids what to read. We just said, read. And whether that was menus at a restaurant, and that's how you got your 15 minutes a day, because it was an at-home reading program. Okay. So it was something that the parents got involved in as well. And which I know would really warm the hearts of my grandparents that it was something that parents did with their kids, you know. But anyway, and so then the kids would earn some fun little prizes, and then they would get to come to our Night of Fire and Thunder, which was our season opening event in May, and they get to come to the races, and they were so excited. And I think the parents were just as excited because typically it was, you know, it was probably about a $50+ ticket once you put the child ticket and the adult ticket together. And so many people would drive by this place and say, I drive by there all the time, but I've never had a reason to come until Susie read and got tickets to the races. I'm going to take her to the races. It was part of her, you know, her reward. And so that we were well into our second generation and starting to touch at the edge of the third generation of kids being involved in Race to Read. So I just personally, that was something that was really something that was, you know, my dad allowed me to do it. And I remember we were probably 5 years into the program. Well, 3 years into the program, I realized this was a thing. And so I said, I really need to create a curriculum that is consistent across the board, times, you know, all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, we were going crazy. And it was probably the 5th year. And my dad says to me, he goes, so how many tickets you think we're going to give away to the races? And I go, well, you know, we've got 10 schools involved in the program, and at 500 kids per school, you know, that's about 5,000 kids. And if they each bring an adult, that's about 10,000 people. So I said, you know, and he goes, you do realize that's half of our capacity. And I go, oh, but you know as well as I do that they don't all come, and they don't all, you know, so, and we blew past 10 schools like it was sitting still. So it never became a problem. What it did do is it made that event be an event that we knew how to plan for, because we knew that we were going to be at capacity every year. You know, there's always events that you go, well, I hope we advertise correctly. I hope that the weather holds. I hope that this, I hope that that. And it was always, we always knew that event was going to be packed because of Race to Read. So, and I got so many nice notes, especially from mothers of sons, because typically girls will curl up with a book, you know.
Absolutely.
Boys are a whole nother animal.
Yep.
And, they just have way too many things going on. And to sit down and slow down and read a book. But the best notes that I got from mothers and parents were, you know, it finally, because there were cars and connected, there was racing connected. My son said that, and it was a 6 week program. So it wasn't a career. It was
Wasn't the
just
whole
6 weeks.
school year.
Yeah, it was, and most habits can be formed in 3 weeks. And
Mm-hmm.
so these boys started reading and they started getting connected with chapter books
Oh
and
yeah.
series. And then they couldn't wait for the next series, the next book to come out in the series. And we did it for elementary. We did it preschool and elementary. So 6th grade was the cutoff.
Mm-hmm.
You once they get into middle school, that's it.
Yeah.
It's not, I wouldn't say you've lost them, but if you haven't created a love for reading when they're young, then it's very difficult to make that
Yeah.
happen. So
Yeah, for
anyway,
sure.
that's probably a challenge. But again, um, you know, because we were allowed to do what we were gifted and where we felt, that we felt comfortable. My
Mm-hmm.
sister, she handles all of our souvenirs out here at the track, and she's remarkable at it. And so that was always really good. Um, Probably the biggest blessing is the people that have come across that we've that
Mm-hmm.
we've been able to get to know, and families. and
Yeah.
and you don't really realize that, after 65 years, and we announced that we had sold the property last year. um, all of a sudden you just get all these notes and emails from people saying, I don't know if you realize, but my dad or my uncle or my brother or
Mm-hmm.
my sister or my mother or my aunt or whatever. um, and then they just go into stories.
Yeah.
And some of them we know, and then there's some of them that we're like, did you know this? Did you
Mm-hmm.
have you ever heard that story? And so that was, the biggest thing is the blessing. And what it taught me, as a person, as far as a work ethic and integrity and that kind of thing. I was talking to somebody at Bristol this last weekend, and I was saying, I really have a hard time walking past a piece of trash on the ground. I don't care if it's at Walt Disney World, if it's at a drag race, or if it's at a mall. I
Mm-hmm.
really have a hard time, because that's the first job that I had out here at the track, was picking up trash. Because when you're 7, 8 years old, there's not a whole lot else you can do. And
Right.
you do that when nobody else is here. So, it's pretty safe. And I remember my grandfather making us pick up cigarette butts, because
Oh,
cigarette butts are trash. And so when I see somebody flick a cigarette butt, I'm just like,
yeah.
there's a there's a part of inside of me that doesn't get real nice, but
Yeah.
I but but those are the things that, and our kids work other places now, and that work ethic is still, it carries with them, because that's
Yeah.
what we learned how to do when we were young. So again, like
Right.
reading, you learn it when you're young, and it kind of just stays with you.
So as you were talking about the notes that you received, I was thinking, oh, I think there's another book in there somewhere.
Probably. It's really
Probably.
interesting, because me being the reader person, when I mentioned this to our family in a family meeting, I said, you guys, when we have oil downs at the track, we have downtime. My dad would get on the microphone and he would start just kind of, let me share with you this, let me tell you that,
Yeah.
and invariably people would come up to us and say, is there a book that has all these stories in there? And we're all like, you really think somebody would read that? And so finally, when it was getting close to our 55th anniversary, I said, I think we should look into writing a book. And of course, all 6 heads turned to me and they go, that's a great idea, Tammy, go for it. And I went, I mean, I've written press releases and I've written speeches for my dad, but a book? that's a whole nother animal.
And it's a
And
big book.
yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's got let's see, I think it's got 201 pages or so. But I mean, and it's a fun read. It really is a fun read. And I thought it was, and then people that have read it. But anyway, oh, so now all of a sudden now my hands are sweating. I'm thinking, oh man, what did I get myself into? Well, I was on the board for Racers for Christ, and Lisa Edwards, her husband Mike Edwards, used to race pro stock, and she was on the board with me. So she and I got to a board meeting in Arizona one year a little early, just so we could spend some time together. And she goes, "So what's going on, Tami?" And I said, "Well, I kind of got myself into a little bit of a situation and I'm not sure how to get out of it." She goes, "What's up?" So I told her. She goes, "Oh, I got the guy for you." I'm like, "What?" And she says, "Yeah, his name is Chad Bonham." And so get this in the right spot.
I see it.
Chad
Yeah.
Bonham. Yep. And he wrote articles for Fellowship of Christian Athletes. He wrote books for other Christian athletes and that kind of thing. And she says, he lives in Oklahoma. She says, "Let me get you hooked up. I don't know if he's got any projects on his plate right now, but he's definitely the guy you need to get in touch with." And I'll tell you what a godsend he was. We flew him into town. He met our family, and I started sending him people. And of course, I would call the people first and say, "You're going to be hearing from Chad. Please give him, 30 minutes of your time, because we're writing a book and we'd really like to have you be involved in it." And it was just, it actually went together in about 10 months, which is
Wow.
believable.
Quick.
And we were able to debut it at the Mile High Nationals at our 55th anniversary. And so it's about 10 years old. So you're right, Melinda. It's probably time for a rewrite.
Yeah. Especially where you're kind of at the end of your story with the racetrack, and you've gotten all those notes from people. I mean, as the former owner of a newspaper, and I loved to write stories. And I think people love reading those kinds of stories.
Mm-hmm.
So where could somebody get a copy of that book?
Yeah. So if you go to our website, which is bandimere.com, there's a spot on there where you can order a book, or get in touch with me, which is Tami, Tami, at bandimere.com. So just my email, my first name at my last name.com. And and they're $14.99, $15 if you don't want to deal with the penny. Yeah. And typically it costs about $5 to ship it to you. But
I think there's a lot of people that would enjoy reading just racing stories. Doesn't matter if you've never been to that track. There's still good stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's some interesting personalities that we ended up,
I'm sure
getting some stories from. And, the beauty of it too is that, it wasn't long after this was published that, 2 or 3 of the people that we had interviewed are gone, so you're like, we got that story. That was good.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of a little bit reminds me of Lost Speedways that Dale Earnhardt did because I've watched that series a couple of different times, and there was most of those, if not all those tracks, I'd never been to. But what good stories they were. And to hear the old guys talk about the racing and who went over the fence and all those different things. We got to keep that history alive.
Well, and not only that, but, I think a lot of people think that, oh, well, Bandimere Speedway, it's always been a success story. No, it hasn't. I mean, you even think about Disneyland and Walt Disney, you think, oh, that was an easy thing. No, it really isn't. It really wasn't. I mean, there were so many times that he came up against a major roadblock and said, "No, I believe in this. It's going to happen, and I'm going to continue to push forward." And that's kind of us as well. I mean, there were a lot of things that were roadblocks, and we just kind of said, "Well, we think that this is the right way to go, so we're going to keep pushing it and see if it'll work." And fortunately, it did.
It always amazes me that people know there's a track. So this happened at Kalamazoo, my local track, Kalamazoo, Michigan. So it's out, in the country, but there's houses not far away. But the track was there long before the houses. And then the houses want to complain about the track. Oh, no. You gave that up the day you decided to build your house here.
Yes.
Because you knew the track was here.
Yes.
What did you think? Because you built a house there that it was going to close. And so that always kind of irritated me about people like that.
It's and that has been not a huge issue over the years, because I think that we took the attitude that we wanted to be a help for the community. And again, between my dad and I, we would go speak to Rotary clubs and Sertoma clubs and that kind of thing. And or we would have groups come out here and we would speak to them. And you could see the light bulb come on in certain people's minds as you were talking about, this really wasn't built as a place to, attract all kinds of riffraff and that kind of thing. I mean, the riffraff, so to speak, is already there. We're just providing a place where because the reason that people get upset is because they crash on the highways and they go faster and there's pedestrians and that kind of thing. But bring it to the racetrack. We have a place for you to to come and enjoy the automobile, because everybody has that need for speed at some point in their life, and so we have a place for it.
And a lot of people, it's ignorance is what causes the problem, because they don't understand that all kinds of people enjoy racing. Young, old, men, women, kids, whatever, and that it's not riffraff. I mean, it's and I think racing for a long time had such a redneck, connotation to it. Which I don't think, I mean, I think people who really maybe don't understand might still think that, but not so much anymore.
Well, and when you have a it's not an us versus them mentality, when you mention to them that, when you're on an on-ramp and you're getting on a highway and there's a lane that's going to merge, are you going to be the first one on the highway? That's racing. I'm sorry. And they go, oh yeah. I mean, whenever you accelerate, that's part, that's that thing inside of us that says, I'm going to beat you.
Right.
So
isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
And it's worse now than ever. For sure. Sorry about the coughing. So sorry.
No.
So Tami, what is your legacy? Your family's legacy for Bandimere Speedway?
We have made it very clear that this place was not really even about drag racing. It was about having a platform to share the love of Jesus with people. And when people come to our facility, they know that there's something different here. They can sense it, they feel it. And it's not just the setting, although the setting is beautiful. And you and I talked before, has nothing to do with us. I mean, we didn't build this mountain behind us.
Right.
But I think that when you have an attitude that your guests are your guests, they're not your customers, but they are people that you want to take care of, and you want to know more about them, and you want to share in their highs and lows with their families, and we've gone through generations of families here as well, grandpas and then their children, and then their children, and then their grandchildren, and that kind of thing. So I think that that's probably, if somebody were to say to us, I came out to your racetrack and I really enjoyed the races, but I did feel like there was something different here. There it is.
Yeah, for sure.
And my grandparents would really be, I think they would be really proud of that. I really truly think that they would be proud of that. And, because for them, it was racing was just something that gave them an entree into sharing with other people, into being part of people's lives.
Yeah. And the friends that you've made, I always, I a lot of times ask somebody I interview, what's your favorite thing about being involved in racing? And I would tell you that 95% of the time, the answer is the people I've met.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, even I go to quite a few of the NHRA national events, and when there is something that goes down with somebody, one of the guys in Tony Schumacher's pit area got hurt over the weekend and was in the hospital, broke his leg. And I'm telling you, when he finally showed up on Sunday, you would have thought that, I mean, we all just rallied around him. Everybody, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just Tony's group, but everybody was like, "Are you okay? Is everything good? Are we're worried about you." So, it's just that it's knowing that you have that group of people around you to
Yeah.
support you, and that at some point they're going to support you, but you're going to support them as well.
Right.
Yeah.
You always have those people that have your back, even
Yeah.
you don't think about it until something happens. And
Yep.
then when you're the one on the receiving end, I've been on the receiving end, and when my son passed away, the race people were the first ones to reach out to me because he was the racer, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
and you just never forget those people. And no matter how far away you move or you change jobs or whatever you do,
Mm-hmm.
they're still your race family for sure.
Uh-huh. For sure.
Yeah. Well, Tammy, what have we not talked about that we should talk about? Because I feel like we could just sit and talk all day long.
Well, yeah, we probably could actually talk all day long. One of the things that I'm really honored to be is the chair of the board for Racers for Christ.
Yes.
And Racers for Christ has been around for about 52 years, and we provide encouragement and ministry in all forms of motorsports, not just drag racing. But it's God has been so good to that ministry over the years, because as it is, how things ebb and flow, and that
Hmm.
kind of thing. And it just seems like people just really need somebody to care about them, and to take an interest in them, and that gives us then the opportunity to share with them about Christ and that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I heard somebody say the other day, so we're populating heaven, and I said, I think the better thing is we're depopulating hell.
There you go.
And
Good comment.
I kind of like that, maybe even better than populating heaven. But
Yeah.
um, but we just got some incredible people that um, are that hang out in the heat and the weather, and go to hospitals and visit with people, and are there, like you said, when your son passed away, that are come alongside people and comfort them and that
Hmm.
kind of thing. And so it's just part of that community that just is really special, and I'm really blessed. I laugh that if you don't want to get put on a committee, don't ever leave a board meeting and go to the bathroom.
Oh yes.
Because you come back
Or
and
or
they go,
don't or
yeah,
don't not show up.
yeah,
Don't miss a meeting because that's the night you're going to get dragged into whatever job it is.
correct, correct.
Yeah.
And that kind of happened to me a little bit when I became the board chair, but it's just been such an incredible opportunity, because when I was actually asked to serve on the board, I was going through a divorce, and I was dealing with a lot of feelings of rejection and that kind of thing. And then to be asked by two board members on the same day if I would consider being on the board, I just thought, huh. And again, it was one of those yes moments that
Hmm.
that I thought, yeah, I think I need to say yes to this. And
Yeah.
I'm really glad that I did.
So, do you want to tell our listeners just briefly, if you could? I know they do a lot of things, but what is the main reason that Racers for Christ exists? What is their, like? What do they have projects? What did they do?
Yeah, well, and years ago, and it was a realization that we race on Sundays. So that means that people aren't going to church.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of basically started out of a need for chapel service on Sundays. And then it became, oh, you're a chaplain. So my fiance and I want to get married. Will you marry us? Oh, so and so lost a child, or so and so lost, would you be willing to do that, funeral service or memorial service? And so then it has just literally, chapel services are still really important, but it's all that ministry that goes along with it, praying with racers before they go down the racetrack, hospital visits, and all anything that, there's a lot of people that don't go to church. If racing is a big part of their life, again, like I say, most all that happens, usually finals happen on Sundays, so we know where those people are at. So that's how it basically got started, and then it has just evolved. You know how things happen, and they just evolve, and next thing you know, you've got 400 plus chaplains across the country, and you're doing chapel services at dirt races and at boat races and at drag races and at sprint car race, everything. And we have a really great training program that we allow all ministries to be a part of, all racing ministries to be a part of, because it's just an important thing that they're trained properly, and that they know how to handle themselves in split-second decisions, in situations. So it's been really an awesome thing.
So I would guess we can Google Racers for Christ and find somebody in our area, wherever we happen to live, and maybe even get involved if you want to.
Absolutely. We're always looking for chaplains. We're always looking for people to get involved.
Awesome.
So, and usually that's what happens is they're like, well, I'm here anyway. I'm here. So why not? Why not, be a part of it? So,
Yeah. Well, Tami, oh my gosh, I've so enjoyed talking to you today. And
I'm so glad this finally worked.
I'm so glad it finally worked out. And now that we've talked once, I know that we're going to talk again, because I'm going to keep track of you and your radio show and your podcast. I'm so excited that you're doing that. And I will definitely be subscribing and following what you're doing. And if you ever feel like you're running out of names,
I was
running out of names. I have a lot of names.
Well, we might need to flip the seats someday, because you have a great story too. So, those are funny stories. So our family is very, very connected with Colorado Christian University here locally. And so, probably about 10, 11 years ago, one of the professors that I know that's in the School of Business, he said to me, he goes, Tami, I would really like you to be one of our featured speakers at our Values Aligned Leadership Summit. And I said, Kevin, I can't do that. He goes, why? And I go, there's 600 people that come to that. I can't do that. That's way bigger than well, of course, the man asks me in like September, and the event wasn't until April, and I'm thinking, So he just kept pursuing me, and I said, so I told him that I would do it. Then I find out that one of my friends, who is an actual professional motivational speaker, is going to share the stage with me. And so now I go into another whole realm of nervousness and being terrified. So I said to Mark, I don't think I can do this. He goes, come on, we're going to go to lunch. So we go to lunch, and he says, why do you think you can't do it? And I go, I don't speak for a living. You speak for a living. You're the one that has your shtick, and that kind of thing. I don't have a shtick, and he goes, just tell your story. People just want to hear your story.
Right.
And I just felt at such peace with that. And then I started writing the story, and just, and making sure that I hit on the things that they had asked me to hit on. And it was really, honestly, I felt really good about it. I felt really comfortable about it. And the feedback that I got, so again, don't ever be afraid to tell your story, because that's who you are.
Yeah.
So,
and you never know what you've gone through is going to help somebody.
Yep.
So, you know, the saying, oh, it just left me. Some people are put into our lives because we need them, and some are put into our lives because they need us. Right.
Correct. Yep.
I've lived by that for a really long time because I've
Mhm.
gone through all kinds of different things in my life. I've been divorced, remarried to a wonderful guy, you know, 4 kids, lost my son to suicide, just all kinds of things. But you can help somebody. And when you're willing to share your story and
Mhm.
not keep it close, but be able to say, hey, I went through this and look where I am today. I'm strong. I can do this. Excuse me, whatever. And
And
so
so can you. Yeah. Right.
you just have to say, you know, if I can help one person,
Yeah.
and
You.
I can't even tell you how many people have come up to me because they know the story about my son, have come
Mhm.
up to me when they've met me and said, "Oh, my sister, my brother, my dad, my whatever." And they
Mhm.
want to tell me about their family member. And
And maybe
so
they've never even talked about it
a
before.
lot of people don't because they
Yeah.
don't, people are uncomfortable talking to me as the mother.
Mhm.
But by me being so open and that about it, you know,
Mhm.
makes it easier. But a lot of people, no, they've not talked about it. And so
Yeah.
um yeah, just tell your story and be proud. Gosh, I'm so sorry. See, the cough drop
Wore
quit
off.
working.
Yeah.
That probably means it's time
Trust.
to quit talking. So
You're doing
um
good.
anyway,
Mm.
Tammy, thank you for being on today. I've just really, really enjoyed
Thank you.
talking
Yep,
and
Linda.
hearing your story. I love your story, and I can't wait to hear all those other stories of the people you're going to interview.
I'm excited. I'm
Yeah.
excited. Now it gives me a real reason to spend an hour with them. You know, I have a reason now. It's not like, let's just sit down and chat. Now I have, a real reason to do that. So I'm excited.
Well, and technology gives us so many avenues. It's so easy
Uh-huh.
to do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Really easy. Yeah.
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 Well, you take care.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna keep track of you. You keep track of me.
I
Um,
will.
let's stay in touch, and I hope you have the best summer ever.
Thank you. So far, it's I don't want to be cavalier, but I really haven't missed racing yet.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of nice to be able to just kind of enjoy time. I think God has allowed us 65 years of working hard, and it's time to just kind of enjoy.
And
So
I think you know when it's time to do something different.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, God bless you and your
Thank
family for
you.
all that you've done, and
You as well.
let's stay in touch.
Okay, thanks, Melinda.
Thanks, Tammy. Bye. Hey, my name is Melinda Russell, and I am obsessed with telling the stories of women involved in motorsports, young and older, from all walks of life, currently involved in a wide range of roles or sharing their stories from the past. I'm a wife, mother of 4 adult children, and a mama of 16. In 2017, I was searching social media for a group dedicated to women in motorsports. When I didn't find what I was looking for, I posted a message to a few racing pages to see if any women would like to connect with me. And now I have thousands of women and men who are part of the Women's Motorsports Network. As crew chief of the only media company dedicated to women in motorsports, I work from wherever my travels take me, publishing this podcast, the Women's Motorsports Network News Online Magazine, and Let's Talk Racing Live, my social media show. You will hear from women who share their stories from the grid of life, how they manage the messy and memorable moments of family, work, and racing. You will hear their tried and true secrets of success and many other topics like friendships, family, hardships, and heroes that women deal with to balance the seasons of life. So grab your favorite beverage, pull up a seat, make sure you are comfy, and get ready to be inspired and encouraged from the stories on the Women's Motorsports Network podcast.